Hi, if you're going to be a sex pest, at least be hot. Andrew, and this is Gayties Toys. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're going back to a bit of a sub-series within the wider series, and that being specifically 1984's Secret Wars. This is one where, unlike superpowers, there's a very finite amount of women characters within the comic book event that could have and should have been made into toys. So this time around, we're going to go more the villain side and take a break from the heroes, which there's quite a few left, but we are eventually wrapping this up. So let's just get right into Enchantress, Volcana, and Titania. We've already done a bit of a deeper dive into the history of Mattel's Secret Wars in especially the first video, so you can always go back and rewatch that. Essentially, Mattel sort of went to Marvel and said, we want to make a Marvel-style figure line to rival that of superpowers. So can you just go out and make a comic book that we can base these figures on? And essentially, it really was like a toy box type of request where they said, take these action figures and mash them together. And that is precisely what Marvel did. The Secret Wars comic book ran for a full year, around May of 1984 until April of 1985. Essentially, it was about just some godlike man called the Beyonder with fabulous hair and an even fabulouser white disco tracksuit. Kind of just getting bored and saying, I'm going to take the heroes from Earth and the villains from Earth, build this battle world, and make them fight. And fight they did. On the villain side, initially, there was only the one woman in that cast, which is quite, surprising given how many were on the heroes side. That said, two more would come, and these two characters particularly would be very intrinsic to both the, the kind of Secret Wars mythology as well as Mattel's requests. So, they, compared to a lot of the characters on this, sub-series, they have kind of like a real special place here. First up, however, is the Enchantress, who I would argue is one of sort of the main just villainesses of the Marvel Universe. She first appeared in Journey into Mystery 103 in 1964, really as sort of a new villain for Thor. Initially, Amora the Enchantress sort of worked with Loki to do, trickster stuff, like kill Thor's love interest, Jane Foster, trickstery. She would go on to form the Masters of Evil with Baron Zemo, which is sort of the evil counterpart to the Avengers, really solidifying herself as a premier villainess. Within Secret Wars, she was actually kind of one of my favorite characters, despite having a very small role within it. When the Beyonder chose all the villains to be on, the bad side, she was plucked in to Battleworld to fill that role, but she was very much like, I have no interest in being anyone passing. Like, she's just like above it all. So she actually went to Thor and said, hey, what if we just, left and went back to Asgard? Thor was a hard no. So eventually they kind of just had to, play out events as it were. The other two villainesses to join the Secret Wars comic book event were really a request by Mattel. Mattel went to Marvel and said, hey, we have grand plans to make lots of figures here, so if you could create two more women characters on top of the piles they already had, that'd be great. So Jim Shooter included Titania and Volcana in Secret Wars number 3. That said, Mattel, you know the reason why we're here. They never made any women in Secret Wars. In fact, the two that they had planned weren't even really technically involved in the comic book itself. So this is what we in the biz know as performative diversity, where you talk a big game, but you don't actually follow through with action. The strange origin here is that Mary McFerrin and Martian Rosenberg were two women from Denver, Colorado, and apparently Denver, Colorado was used to create Battleworld. They were not necessarily evil, but they were liars. They claimed that one of them was actually the new Spider-Woman that was, popping in and out. So once they were found out, I don't know if they were chased out of town or they left, but they just sort of said, to hell with it, we're going out into the Battleworld wilderness. There they were found by Doom, who said, hey, what if I just gave you superpowers and you joined my, quest for evil? And they were like, yeah, for sure, let's do that. So real bit of a career turn, but that said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. In Secret Wars number 3, Doom throws them in some tubes, Mary becomes Titania, Marcia becomes Volcana. I gotta stop and say that I love Volcana because she's got that sort of just Midwestern dumper. Like, you know me, I love a little diversity of body types, and Volcana's it. Unfortunately, that's all she is. Aside from some origins, like many other characters in Secret Wars, they really didn't get too many kind of standout moments. One of the most noteworthy would be that Titania and She-Hulk would get into a bit of a battle, and that would sort of launch their now decades-long rivalry. Volcana, yeah, we'll get into it more later, but she's, really a one-and-done kind of character. Believe me, I've done my research and I can't really find any indication that any three of these characters were planned for Secret Wars. I mean, we do know that Dazzler and Mystique, of course, were in the very early concepts of a future wave, but despite the request, Volcana and Titania were not necessarily, on the board. Likewise, Enchantress, despite being a big villain within Marvel, I mean, when your powers are horny, I don't think that's really a huge draw for you to put into a kid's line. Since Secret Wars, these characters have had different levels of success since then. So Enchantress, of course, is still, a very widely known and popular character. Time of recording, she's dead, at least comic book dead, so we'll see if she comes back. There is another character with the name of Enchantress kind of strutting around now, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Amora back at some point in the future. I mean, between Secret Wars and her untimely death, she was, very much like a villain for Thor, over the decades, sometimes even a love interest. I mean, she really was interesting in the sense that she was always sort of accompanied by Scourge the Executioner, who was her muscle, who was also in love with her, but she was just, friend zoning him hard. Just a fun, duplicitous, witchy character, and just someone you would expect to have a lot of toys, and that was a bit of a surprise to me. I walked in here super confident that Enchantress had toys during Toy Biz's 90s phase, during Toy Biz's Marvel Legends phase. She would be blowing up toy shelves. Not so. I mean, her first real, I would say, action figure would come from Hasbro's Marvel Legends. They did briefly that 3 3/4-inch line. She appeared in a 2-pack there. Likewise, in the more popular 6-inch line, she had basically the same figure repainted twice. It's a pretty good figure. It holds up, but I mean, she's probably definitely due for a new one. Volcana, this is a much shorter story. I mean, she struck up a relationship with Molecule Man, because why not? And that's really it. I mean, since then, she's not really shown up beyond some barely memorable cameos. So it's not like there's a high demand for her figure. If you do want the full Secret Wars, experience, of course you would want that figure. But I mean, she's not blowing up anyone's top 10 list, I can tell you that. Titania is much more fun. So she has, of course, had some links to Wrecking Crew, certainly a rivalry with She-Hulk. She's sort of positioned a bit more now as an anti-hero. Like Volcana, had never had an action figure until Hasbro PulseCon 2024 unveiled not a Secret Wars retro line, but rather just Marvel Legends with Secret Wars style packaging on it. And in that wave was the first ever Titanium action figure, who looks spectacular and is a super fun figure. Glad to have her. Even comes with those stupid holographic shields that all the original ones did. It's great that she's here. And I mean, as I've mentioned in past videos, this is probably the best you're going to get. Mattel owns the body style to the original Secret Wars figures, while Hasbro has, of course, the master license for Marvel. So the likelihood of the two of them coming together to make a classic retro Secret Wars line, very unlikely until licenses expire, let's say. Short and sweet. There's not a lot to say here. There's not even a lot of customs on these toys floating out there. I wouldn't say they're the most in demand of all the women that are in Secret Wars. That really does sort of get filled by the superhero quotient, where there's a lot of really fantastic characters there who, again, like these ladies, didn't really get a lot to do in Secret Wars, but it's a huge cast, so what are you gonna do? So with that, I thank you for watching, for liking, for commenting, subscribing, all those YouTube things, and I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.